Hi everybody, I'm Sarah, the Real Simple Mama. We're out here with some kale and lettuce treats, but the video today is going to be very specific. We're going to be talking about worming medication for your chickens, particularly the kind that is called Ivermectin, and some of the weird kind of quirky things about it that you should consider before you use it on your backyard flock. And what I wanted to do is I've been answering questions about this medication for a while. I do like it. I'm really happy with it. I feel like it works, but there were some kind of weird things about it. And so I wanted to do a video specifically about Ivermectin. And I do have videos that I will be linking up here up top throughout this video. I have one about how to do a medical check on your chickens. You can learn all about chicken poop, what's normal, what's not. And then of course, what is in my medical kit for my chickens, sort of like my first aid kit, and the medications that I recommend you start getting or having on hand. And finally, all about worms with chickens. But let's talk about this particular medication. Now what I have, and I've gotten the label out so that you can see it, the specific kind that I have is called Ivermax, but we're talking about anything that is an Ivermectin. And there are two main quirky, weird things that you should think about before you start using this on your birds for this medication in particular. This is not necessarily worming your flock if it's other types of medications. So the first thing that you may have seen on the label is that it says it's pour on for cattle, and a lot of medications for chickens that comes in a few different forms. Usually the three variations that you have is it can either be a water additive, which means you measure it out and you put it in your water bucket for your chickens to drink. It is an injection, which you measure out in your little syringes and you inject your birds, usually in the breast, so on the front side of your bird. Or it's pour on, and pour on means it's the equivalent of you putting like flea medication on your cat or your dog. You put it on the back of their neck where they can't reach it and mess with it, and it's absorbed in through the skin, and then it goes into the bloodstream. Okay, so what we're talking about is pour on pour on Ivermectin. So the first thing that's weird about it is, like I said, this says that it's for cattle. Well, why am I giving it to my chickens if it's for livestock that's like hundreds of pounds? And here's one of the things that's been weird about Ivermectin is that it hasn't had enough research done on chickens as far as them talking about egg withdrawal and those kinds of things. I'll talk about that as another episode. Geez, Blue, it's like horking it down, girl. So one of the weird things about some of these medications is that all of the warnings and the dosages and all of that stuff is for sheep, goats, cows, these huge livestock animals. So you have to do your own research and figure out your dosing for your birds. And I also put here the little syringe. And unfortunately, the Ivermectin, I've marked on this thing like 3 times. The Ivermectin makes my numbers come off. But what we end up doing is counting the drops as we push it in. And on all of my birds, I do between 5 and 7 drops for just a normal full-grown hen. Now, where's Lacey? Oh, she's inside, sorry. My little Wyandotte, who is a meat egg-laying hybrid bird, so she's bigger. She's in there digging a hole. Oh, they have a huge hole in there, you little creeps. So she is going to have a couple of more drops. And then my skinnier chickens, look at this. Where do you think you're going, girl? Tick, 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 tick. You like it? She thinks she's hiding in the Christmas tree. My smaller birds, like this is Flopsy, and she's my skinniest bird. I would only give 5 drops. Okay, so that's the first thing to realize. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not safe for chickens. It's kind of the same thing as when there's a whole bunch of medications that haven't been tested on humans, like for pregnant women. So they just kind of say, we don't recommend it because we don't want you to hold us liable if anything happens. I'm sorry for the truck. It doesn't mean that it's definitely not safe. It just means nobody wants to be the guinea pig and do the research. But I have some good news about Ivermectin that I'll tell you here in a minute when it comes to using it on your chickens. So the first thing is check in the backyard chicken forums. As always, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not an avian vet or anything. So my information, they're my shoes. Aren't they awesome? My information should be used as a guide, not as the Bible or as like the only thing that you do. And then you go out and, medicate your chickens because, well, Real Simple Mama said that I'm good, but I'm not that good. Okay. So that's the first thing is it's going to be kind of weird because you have to buy. And as you can see, I've medicated my chickens with this medication, and this is what we're going to talk about next, you have to do the dosage twice. And I'll talk about how to do that in a second. But for me, medicating my whole flock, I think total I've done it 3 times. So 3 times 2. So all of my chickens have been dosed 6 times. This is how much I still have left. So if you are in any kind of local backyard chicken group, a local group, maybe ask and see, hey, do we all want to split the cost and we split the dosage? Because I'm never going to use this whole bottle. So that's the first kind of weird thing with ivermectin. The next weird thing that you would come up with on some of the worming medications is that you have to dose your chickens twice. Hey. And this is because the same thing with if you're treating other types of parasites that, they live on or in your animals. You have to hit every phase of the life cycle. So if you were to dose once and you don't kill all of the eggs, for example, those eggs will still hatch, and 2 weeks later you have the adults infesting your birds again. So you have to read the directions. For Ivermax, the second dose, you have to do and dose everybody with the same dosage again between 7 and 14 days later. And this is so you truly have eradicated everything. And if you forget to do that, then you really haven't eradicated them. And in fact, you may end up with the next generation of worms living in your birds. They may end up even more resistant to the medications. It's sort of like the fear of overusing antibiotics, is that over time, all of these germs are going to get resistant. So make sure you set an alarm, put it in your chicken journal, that if you need to dose twice, that you make sure you don't forget. For example, I have to do my second dose of my 3 new hens. I have to do the second dose tomorrow night, and I don't want to forget. The next thing that I want to talk about with this medication is egg withdrawal. And this is where I've learned some stuff recently that made me want to make this video. And it's good news. So I wanted to teach you about it. So maybe at this point in the video, you're like, why does she have this and why is she using it if there hasn't been enough research done on chickens and all of this other stuff? So let's talk about the concept of egg withdrawal. When it comes to your chickens who are running around with lettuce stuck in their mouth, when you're dosing chickens for things, just like we were talking about, like with the pregnant women, or like if you're breastfeeding, we don't know if the medication might go through the milk and then get into your baby, so it may not be safe, etc., etc. Egg withdrawal is where your chickens have been medicated. They are still going to be laying their eggs. If they're feeling better, if their body feels like they can handle it, then they're going to be laying eggs anyway, and they look and feel the same. But if there's a chance that that medicine has gone through their system and gotten into the eggs, then in concept, you have to withdraw from eating their eggs for X amount of days. For worming medication, it's usually 7 days after the last dose, right? And if we review, this has to be dosed twice. So let's say, I'm just making up numbers, I have to do my first dose of everybody, and you always want to medicate everybody just in case. If one chicken's got it, chances are everybody does, right? So let's say I do my first dose on Monday, the 1st of the month, okay? Monday the 1st. I have to do a second dose 7 to 14 days later. So let's say I do it on, what would that be? Wednesday or Thursday the 10th, okay? Egg withdrawal in concept, and I know I don't say that word right. I say like egg withdrawal, but you know what I mean. That means that 7 days after the 10th is when I can start eating their eggs. So for me to do any kind of human consumption of the eggs, or for me to give them away, or for me to sell them, or for me to cook with them, I technically couldn't use the eggs with this medication from the 1st until the 17th, right? Because we dosed on the 1st, we dosed on the 10th. After that second dose, I still have to wait another week. That is what we talk about and what we mean when we say egg withdrawal. So the good news is, and this is the part that I just recently learned, and I thought, oh, I need to do a video. What I just learned recently is that if a human being was to get scabies, or was to get worms, or was to get some type of internal parasite like that, guess what they dose to the humans? Yeah, Ivermectin. It is the same medication that they would treat a person with if a person has any kind of intestinal parasites or worms or scabies or anything like that. And I did learn also that in third world countries where really clean, purified water is hard to come by, that the population is given ivermectin tablets. So yeah, you're drinking this water that hasn't been boiled or it hasn't been cleaned or whatever, but we're trying to counteract any parasites you might get by giving you ivermectin tablets to take. So the question that I leave up to you, and I'll tell you what I do, but what I leave up to you is, if you end up using this medication, in concept, some people continue to honor the egg withdrawal and say, I will not eat these eggs for X amount of days. And you either need to mark them or store them separately, or, whatever system you want so that you don't accidentally cook them. Except because ivermectin is given to people anyway, number one, we know that it's safe, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't do it. And number two, you're not going to have worms, because that's how we would eradicate worms from humans anyway. So my last little observation for you, and then I've got just a couple of random little details. The observation that I would give to you is, if you use ivermectin, now again, I'm not talking about any other type of medication. I'm only talking about anything in the ivermectin family. Again, the one that I use is called Ivermax. And you can get these kinds of medications anywhere where you buy your chicken food, Tractor Supply, any places like that. I'm sure you can order it online. It is not something where you have to have a prescription. If you have the money, they'll take your money. That's as difficult as it gets. Okay. But if you choose, you don't have to do the egg withdrawal, because this is given in a different form to humans if they have an infection of something that, they've been infested with some type of worm, or to prevent it. So that was an interesting thing for me. The reason that this came up, and I have one more thing to tell you. The reason that this came up is because I have my 3 new hens, and they are laying. I'm getting 2 or 3 eggs a day out of 8 chickens in the winter with really short days, which is like, hooray! But then the thought of, wait a minute. Oh, I just dosed them with ivermectin. Now I can't have the eggs for 2.5 weeks. No! So then I started going through my backyard chickens forum and asking all of the experts, like, do you guys really discard the eggs for 2.5 weeks? Like, what do you do? And they started teaching me, well, if you use something in the ivermectin family, no, I don't bother discarding the eggs because, and then I just learned what I just told you. The last little thing I would tell you is, if you do choose to discard the eggs, and whatever you choose to do for you and your family is the right decision. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what I think. It's just different options. But what I would tell you is, if you do choose to discard the eggs, you're not going to use them for human consumption, which means you're also not going to sell them. You're not going to give them to your neighbors to bribe them or anything like that. What do you do with them? I would say, if you've got a wooded area around somewhere, you could throw them out into the woods. Some people let their dogs eat them. They just toss them, and the dogs will eat them. So you could give it to the wild animals or whatever. What I would do when I have to discard eggs is I go and cook them in the kitchen, and I give them right back to my girls. I don't want to throw the raw eggs on the ground, because I don't want my chickens to make the connection that they can eat their eggs raw, because then you start having that problem. But I don't want them to go to waste, and I would rather them go back to my chickens, who will continue to lay eggs for my family. So I do give the eggshells back to the girls, and I do scramble the eggs or cook them in whatever way, and then I will give them right back to the flock. So that's what I choose to do with that. But I wanted to give you the information, because as I learn and as I try to do better, I want to give you guys that information too. Tick, tick, ticks. So if you use anything in the ivermectin family, remember, it's kind of weird because the original dosages and the instructions and stuff on it are for livestock, but it is safe for chickens. In my experience and my research, it is the most commonly used worming medication. You have options when it comes to what to do with the eggs during that period. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Like I said, I would not dose more than twice a year preventatively, because you don't want to end up with more resistant parasites. I was dosing because one of my new girls did have worms in her droppings. They could be dead worms that are getting out of her system, but it could be a sign that she has an active infestation. So we are just going to take care of that. And let me know what you guys think. If you ever have any questions, I'm here to help. Thanks.